For the opportunity to speak to you all today. As I've introduced myself before, Tristram Morgan 365 Solutions Group is the business that I own, founded about 3 years ago. And what we do is we help small to medium enterprise with a particular focus on the not-for-profit sector to make the most of what they already have, generally speaking, which is the suite of Office 365. So it's a free or nearly free tool for the not-for-profit sector and enormously powerful, but largely poorly understood in terms of the power that you can get, not only from the tools within Office 365 that most people don't even know exist, but also how it can help you to integrate with other platforms that are entirely separate from Microsoft. So, just to give you a bit of a window into the Office 365 realm, most people think of the Office desktop as being Office 365, so Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. If you're particularly adventurous, you might be using OneDrive and SharePoint. But beyond that, as you can see, there's a whole array of other tools that can add a great deal of value to your business. So just to compare those with a lot of third-party tools, which a lot of people are using as well as Office, unaware that they already have access to these free alternatives. If you look at Office Desktop, obviously Google Docs is something else that other people use, but once you're using the Office stack, a lot of people will use Tableau or ClickView or another reporting tool. Very powerful, really good tools, but they're at an extra cost and they're an extra subscription to manage, another license to renew. Power BI is a very powerful reporting package that comes as part of Office 365. It's not strictly speaking reliant on Office 365, you can have it separately, but it really helps you to extract meaningful data and present it in visualizations that are very easily digestible. Then we have Planner. A lot of people are using Trello or Monday.com, for example, to manage simple workloads, but Planner's already out of the box with Office. Stream is a video storage tool which can replace Vimeo. Microsoft Kaizala is a tool for keeping in touch with people who usually don't have a corporate presence with Office 365. So in other words, they have no corporate email, don't need access to SharePoint, but you need to keep in touch with them for things like allocating shifts or letting them know company news. So Kaizala is the Microsoft tool. WhatsApp for Business is often used as a third-party tool for that. Zapier is a tool like If This Then That, which allows you to do one thing in one platform and have another thing happen somewhere else. Power Automate, which used to be called Microsoft Flow, is the Microsoft equivalent, comes as part of Office. Just to give you an example of where we use that, when I publish a blog post to our website, that also then gets published to our LinkedIn page, to our Facebook page, and our Twitter account. So post once and you get to use it several times. SharePoint is a direct replacement for Box, which a lot of people are using for document storage. OneNote replaces Evernote and other electronic notebook tools. Forms is a replacement for Jotforms. Microsoft Teams is often not used. People are using Zoom or Slack or other tools for video conferencing, etc. But Teams is, again, part of the Office 365 stack. And OneDrive for Business instead of Dropbox, and Bookings instead of Calendly. So a lot of people are using these other tools. They just don't know that they've got access to all this other stuff through Office. And that's a lot of what we do, is advocate for just using the tools that you're already paying for. So to give you an idea of the difference, it's about $180 per person per month if you were spending money on all of these other solutions. That's obviously not a typical scenario, but that's worst case. Whereas the business premium cost is $17.20 per month, but of course not for non-profits, where it's actually $4.10 per month for a business premium license. You do get E1s for free, but E1s don't have the desktop applications of Word, Excel, etc. that you can use offline. You have to be connected to the internet to access them through an E1. But for $4.10 per user per month, you have access to everything on there, including the downloads to your desktop for the local versions. So the three pillars that we focus on within Office 365 are really about security, automation, and reporting. So from an IT security perspective, there are lots of steps you can take that are very simple. Most of the tools are free because they come with the admin center of Office 365 that allow you to prevent up to 80% of cybersecurity threats, because most of those are initiated through password compromise from your email address. So by simple multi-factor authentication, implementation, and a few other steps, there are lots of different tools, but you can really make yourself much safer than the neighbor's house so that they're going to get turned over and not you. You can never become impenetrable, but you can become much less appealing than a target that's taken no steps at all. From an automation perspective, I gave you one example of posting website blog posts, but there are lots of other examples which we'll come to in this case study for volunteer marine rescue about integrating systems through simple flows. And then reporting, there's just an example of some of the visualizations from Power BI, so you can take data from any number of sources. It could be an Excel spreadsheet, it could be an HTML feed, it could be pretty much any source, and you can manipulate that data into ways that you create really easy to digest visualizations, which makes it much simpler to understand the information that you're looking at. So the case study for Volunteer Marine Rescue Brisbane, we've been working with that organisation for about 3 years now. And it started off, if you just see the sort of the before picture, lots of disparate systems, lots of things that didn't talk to each other that were handled separately. We've migrated the member data into SharePoint Online, which now becomes the hub for everything else, which we'll go through in a little more detail here. So the previous configuration involved customers or members, prospective members, going to a website and entering their information as a way of registering their interest. That would then be manually dealt with by staff or volunteers from VMR, who would use a VPN connection into their Access database to load up the details. There was also then an entry created into the MyOb system, which would allow them to be invoiced. Then there was access to the security gates for those people who either had access to a hard stand on site or wanted to use the boat ramp. Then there'd be an entry into MailChimp so they could be kept up to date through newsletters and any marketing campaigns that were being sent out for fundraising, etc. And then with the people who are actually rescuing those out on the bay, you'd have to use a laptop to VPN in to get access to the Access database to check what status people were to see if they should be towed free of charge or whether they were a paid up member, etc. So then there was also the issue of insurance. You need to have an insurance certificate in order to use the boat ramp or have access to the hard stand. So that was a question of checking up with members. Do you have one? Then updating the Access database. So lots of manual touch points, quite labour intensive for every member, excuse me, to not only onboard them, but then to renew all of these processes throughout the year with insurance, etc. So then the simplification of this has started with replacing Access with SharePoint Online. So straight away we removed the need for the VPN access. It's a secure, authenticated access directly from a mobile phone or a laptop. So you don't need the VPN, which means that when you're on the boat trying to rescue people, you can check with your phone, search for the registration number of the boat and find out straight away whether they're a paid up member and when it expires. We've also then integrated the form on the website so that populates SharePoint with an entry automatically, so there's no double handling there. Then when it comes time for the insurance renewal, that's automated. Okay, this is now expiring, send a notification out to the member that they need to renew their insurance. The security access is granted or withdrawn based upon the expiry of their membership within SharePoint. Then we've also built a little flow between SharePoint and MyOb so that once the entry's been created from the website into SharePoint, the flow then checks SharePoint for new entries and creates that as an entry in MyOb, and then swoops the other way to look for payment status changes and updates the membership expiry within SharePoint. So all fairly seamless. Another piece of work we're due to commence shortly, which will fairly much complete the picture, is the automation of the updating of MailChimp so that SharePoint will populate that too, again just removing another point of entry for double handling of information. So it's a very simple automated solution, so pretty much from the point of people going to register their interest, everything else is fairly automated, and now it's a matter of managing the exceptions rather than as a default going through all these manual steps to ensure that they've got the right kind of membership and documentation. So the outcome of this is quite significant in terms of savings of hours. So we haven't yet completed every part of that process. We're just literally doing the final stages with MailChimp and a couple of other bits and pieces with MyOb automating payments, so there's no actual manual production of invoices and updating the system. So what it means is that over 1,000 members or so in the VMR Brisbane squadron entity, there's around 3,000 hours being saved by saving 3 hours per member per year, which is roughly equivalent to 1.5 full-time employees. So being a volunteer organisation, there isn't an ROI in terms of dollars on that, but you can imagine how much of an easier sell it is to get people to sign up to be the membership officer or the treasurer when you don't have to go through such an onerous process, and that it's really just managing the exceptions rather than taking on this really significant workload. So Thomas has been kind enough to join us today and has also given us a video testimonial about the work that we've done for them. So that is available on YouTube as something to watch, and it just talks about what we've done. And Thomas will be happy, I'm sure, to answer questions if you have any about the results of this work that we've done over the last few years. Probably less delighted I've thrown him under the bus by offering his time up, but yeah. So just a quick summary of what we've talked about here is really that, what we've been able to do is change the way that they operate from a fairly fundamental point, so that instead of having all these clunky processes that were really disjointed, we've now provided a streamlined solution, which has just saved a lot of man hours, and if you put that into the terms of full-time employees on wages, that's a massive return on investment. The whole thing from start to finish, I think we'd be up to a budget of $30,000 to $35,000 from go to O. So, 1.5 full-time employees is going to take you months to pay that back if you did everything in one go. So it's really significant. And that's just using the tools that they already have. There's no new licenses required, no extra subscriptions needed to make that all happen. So the main ways in which Office 365 can help is about improving service delivery and reducing costs. It's about protecting sensitive data as well, particularly with rules around personally identifiable information and your responsibilities to protect that. That's obviously a huge piece if you can keep your data more secure. The data analytics through Power BI is really handy. But the raising of productivity of staff is very significant. Research from the IDC talks about people spending up to 2 hours per day looking for the right information to be able to do their job. Everything from checking various folders where the document might live, to finding the right version, to checking your email outbox or sent mail because you sent it a while ago and that was the right version. So you can really step up the productivity by making it easy to find documentation through building a proper document management system within SharePoint. Another customer that we've done some work with was CPL. It was really for them about publishing data out to the business as well as out to customers eventually. So for them, they were using Tableau, which was a great tool, did a really good job of reporting. The problem was that in order to license everyone in the business so that they could access that information, it was going to cost a small fortune. Whereas by moving to Power BI, they're able to publish that information to their own internal stakeholders, first starting with management so they can understand how they're performing as a business, then to the service delivery agents so that they can benchmark themselves against other people in the business. And there's a bit of self-management in terms of making sure you hit minimum standards. And then eventually the big picture is to publish that information out to the public so that they can enter information about the condition they have, the budget they have to spend, and what outcomes they can expect. So it really helps people to make a decision to go with them. Compass Institute up on the Sunshine Coast, an award-winning not-for-profit helping people with mental and physical disabilities find work. And for them, it was really about helping their service providers out in the field get access to their data without complex connections through VPNs and having to authenticate into the company data. So by publishing everything into SharePoint and making sure that the authentication happens at the user level, gives them access to everything they need, and we've digitized a few forms to make it super easy to access the stuff they need to out in the field. And that's it. That's the power of Office 365 to really transform the processes of any business. So this is not obviously just applicable to NFPs, it's applicable to every kind of organization, but it does give you an idea of the power of not only the stack of applications that you may not even know you've got within Office 365, but also how that can become the central entry point and the single pane of glass into a whole bunch of other disparate systems. So there you go. Any questions? Yes?
From the designer at the back.
Oh, you're talking my language. I love systems that speak to each other. So when you go into organizations, obviously you offer this and you get them onto it, but is there a consulting fee that you have? I mean, do you go in there? Because obviously you have to kind of go in there, do a bit of an audit on what they're doing and then kind of propose and get all these systems to start talking to each other?
Sure. So the typical engagement will be that someone is introduced to us by another provider who runs out of help or expertise that they can give the customer, so they bring us in to help. Or someone approaches us because they've been referred to us and they need help with, typically it'll be like a server that needs to be replaced and it's going to cost them $20,000 to do so, or we can move them into the cloud for $5,000 to $10,000 to $15,000. So we have that conversation and an immediate ROI, so we don't have to delve too far in that one. Sometimes it's a bit more like we just want to know what we've got and how we can make more use of it. In which case we would have a consulting session up front, which is always free of charge, to figure out if we can help. So that might be an hour or two. It's sitting down with the key stakeholders to say, well, tell us about your environment and your systems and your data and who accesses it and for what purposes. And do you have external people who need to access data sometimes? So we understand at a high level what they're trying to achieve, and then we'll submit a work order to basically say, these are the things that we understand you're trying to achieve, these are the things that we want to deliver for you, and this is the cost, and this is the ROI that we expected to return for you. So from there, really it's a question of do we engage or not. Sometimes it's a block of hours because people aren't really sure what they need, they just know they need to start using Office. So they'll say, look, we'll give you 40 hours worth, see what you can do. So we've been doing a lot of work with Origin Energy, for example, to build Power Apps, to automate a lot of back-end systems, and to give them access on a mobile device to complex back-end systems that they otherwise have to navigate through a mobile, which is difficult. And each time they engage us, they say, we think it's probably going to take a week or two. Excuse me. So they give us a bucket of money and a work order, and we go and build things and check in with them to say, how does this look? It's like, that's great, can you also do this? So it's really a little bit bespoke, but at the end of the day, we'll always consult with people up front, free of charge, free of commitment, to just see if we can help.
Oh, wonderful. No, I wanted to ask because it's interesting. Sometimes your problem is not your problem. The client comes to me and says, we need this, but you go in there and do a little bit of ask a couple of questions, you're like, well, actually, no, you don't. You might need this. So I just wanted to see your process around that. Well, I can already think of a lot of organisations that would need your help. So.
Indeed, and in fact, with Volunteer Marine Rescue, they recognised that they needed SharePoint, whereas a lot of organisations who have a list of members would think they need a CRM.
Yes.
And what you really need is just a list of information that's fairly static. If you need to track sales activity against opportunities and that constantly changes, then you need a CRM, because SharePoint isn't particularly good at that sort of dynamic pipeline update. But for a lot of people, they think they've got a list of people they need to get in touch with. We need a CRM. You really don't. So it's at that point you're often right that people think they need one tool and it's actually another that's going to solve their problem far more cost effectively.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much.
My
Can
pleasure.
I ask
Yes, sure.
So I'm using SharePoint and I've really been converted to a lot of the Microsoft suite recently, primarily OneNote. I'm amazed at how organised I am. You know, the pieces of paper have sort of gone and I've got everything in an orderly fashion. Work to do yet, but in terms of the CRM, so I'm using external CRM, which is quite expensive, and as people come onto the team, it just increases. How would you rate it's Microsoft Dynamics, isn't it? Yeah. So how would you rate that just as a comparison to some of the major CRMs out there?
To give you an idea,
And you got 30 seconds.
Okay, very quickly. Dynamic CRM is a big tool that's used by corporate and enterprise customers.
Yeah.
We've actually built a template to shrink it down to keep it really simple, because for most businesses they just need to know who, what, when, where, how much, what's the next step. So we can roll that out quite cost effectively. The thing that you find with a lot of the cheaper CRMs is they can't handle even quite simple relationships outside one-to-one. So for example, we have partners who introduce customers to us. So we want to monitor which customers have come from which partner. The majority of free CRMs just can't keep track of that unless you start building custom fields, and that gets more complicated to manage. It's quite difficult to configure. Whereas Dynamic CRM allows you to do all of that stuff. It allows you to put in marketing automation at a cost, but you can do that later once you build on that solid foundation. So there are pros and cons. It's certainly more expensive from a licensing perspective than a lot of these other tools, but it's more comprehensive and gives you a proper CRM. Thank you very much, everyone.